the outcry for people who want a better planet. And there are powers that be that let the people panic. Look at the Gulf of Japan, cause they have really planned it. Heading for the iceberg like the Titanic. Atlantic mystery, Atlantis white from history. The truth about the pyramids in ancient Mayan prophecy. Space Odyssey, look into the anomalies, and you will find suppression of free energy technology. A false democracy born out of a monopoly. Sacred knowledge robbery, like the towers they topple in. No stop.
Have you found yourself with an irresistible urge to wash your potato? I'm sitting here with a bushel of potatoes here right next to me, and I am scrubbing all the dirt off of them and munching down. And I'll tell you what, we are having such a great time picking up the pieces and the leftover potato peels and plaster them on our board and trying to make a picture and figure out exactly what the hell is going on in this world. And we're bringing in these guys like we are tonight and adding another piece on the puzzle, and as it begins to take shape, I'll tell you what, it just keeps bringing up more and more questions as we get more and more answers. Yay! Oh, well, I don't know, Ramon. I'd kind of like to complete a couple of sections of this puzzle that we've been working on, and I mean, although it is starting to take shape, there's so much happening right now, and the undercurrents and overcurrents that are flowing around this cosmos are really kicking up.
Yeah. I just want to mention the music you're listening to, of course. We're going to have the Luminaries featuring Aisha, Free Energy. So this song goes perfect with the interview we have today. Also to let you know, we still have those little monkeys available.
Yeah.
Speaking of monkeys. So it's a 8 gig stick you get from November 17, 2010 all the way to excuse me, to December 25th, 2011, all the shows. We have 5 video interviews on there, and we will also include the Book of Aquarius. So I think that's a great deal, and we're only letting them go for $40.
Yep.
And also, by the way, I'm finally got the book, not out, but you can check out the preview.
Yay!
It's called Scratching the Cosmic Conscience that I wrote after 6 long years. Hopefully the next one won't take that long. And yeah, so you can go read the first chapter and preview it. That should be out towards the end of February, as long as Tom finishes his part.
Yeah. Okay, no pressure.
No pressure. Let's see. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Vimeo. Now we're also on Vimeo, and you can check out also Tom's YouTube channel to find us. And anything else, Tom?
Oh, I don't know. Just keep tabs on the website. We've got a lot of stuff going on, and yeah, that's about it. So Ramon, we had Free Energy for the intro song here, our bumper music. Who have we got as our guest tonight?
Let's see. Who do we have? We have Mark Hoza and Peter Stevens.
Yay! That goes so well.
Let's read into Peter Stevens' bio first. When I was young, my father owned a business inventing machinery in Maury. After I was injured with a leg crush, all the business dried up. So leaving there, I arrived in a casino in 1984 and worked selling farm equipment, sales and service. I've invented my own agriculture machinery, grain dryers, rocket pickers, and microwave processors, distillers, and a huge range of earth-moving equipment. My background has been president of the Appropriate Communities Technology Association, looking at the solar and renewable energies. I'll leave off there and go on to Mark's. Mark Hoza has been interested in alternative energy technologies from his mid-teens. He was born in Colorado and moved to Australia in 1984. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, he became aware of the Patriot movement and the whole world of conspiracy theories to do with the global control by the Illuminati-backed fossil fuel, the Fed monetary system, and pharmaceutical, dirty nuclear, and control farming interests. Welcome to the show, guys.
G'day, Ramon.
Thanks.
If there was any mispronunciation there, blame that on Mark. He misspelled everything.
Oh, yeah.
Well, nobody knows how to say a roper yet.
Oh, boy. Oh, Ramon. Hey, Ramon.
It was,
You did well.
actually, it's
Yeah.
not Peter Stevens. It's not Peter Stevens. It's Peter Stovens, and he's 70 years old, not 65, as we.
Thanks,
Yeah.
man.
So,
It's good to...
Mark, I didn't know you were an American.
I am from Colorado, and I moved here in '94 originally. I came here to study and then ended up studying 2 years. Met a lovely Australian lady. Got married. Went back to Wisconsin for a year or so, and then came back here.
That's why I hear the mixed accent. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
I was always wondering.
Yeah.
No, he's still American. You can have him back soon.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you.
And he can play the flute really well. He's really good on Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
Especially if it's for a friend of mine.
I
We'd
played Happy
You'd have to
Birthday.
say K to Megan, wouldn't we?
So, Mark, let's start with you. How did you? I don't know if we ever covered, because you've been on the show several times. Mark seems to be the go-to guy if you want to know anything about any kind of energy that is not really talked about on places like Fox News and those news channels. So, how did you get yourself involved in all these different people?
The beginning of it was an interest, I suppose, back in the early 90s. I started looking at Tesla. I became aware of Tesla and what Tesla was working on. When I looked at what Tesla was doing, like at that time about 80 years ago, I really started, I guess, going down the rabbit hole, looking at why it was that we weren't using more of these technologies. And it really astounded me how much of the modern day technologies were actually born of Tesla's work. And yet the technologies that would have freed us from the dependence on companies controlling energy had all been made laughing stock to the general public, and I found that really surprising. But I tend to look at things and question, and I spent a lot of time researching this, and it just led from one thing to the next, as you guys would know. Really, I mean, it's such a web of control and global mind control and deceit that I find it.
Cool, our government? No way.
No.
It's not just our government, it's the world government.
Yeah, it's the world. It's a global thing, and like the things that Peter's done as an example. Peter's been working on amazing technology, and he's got amazing knowledge. And there are people who know Peter's doing what he's doing, and yet, he's just kind of on the fringe. Most of his friends think he's a coconut. No, I can't help myself, guys. I should probably leave Peter alone for a bit, because. So anyway, I got asking a lot of questions. Yeah, he's just got a lot to answer for, so I try to
Give him crap on the side.
Yeah.
All right, so let's bring on Peter. And Peter, how did you become, I guess, a coconut, according to Mark.
Yeah. Well, it was very easy. I just got a seed planted, sitting down on the beach, washed up. Yeah. How did I get to be a coconut? Just as Mark described. Well, it started at a very early age, being allowed to basically be involved and working alongside people who were manufacturing and playing with steel in my father's workshop. And we would often sit up at night talking to farmers, telephone and talk to them and find out where we could go and demonstrate a machine and try and sell it to them. So I'd be in on all these conversations that were going on. And it ended up being, rather exciting. So I got bitten by the bug of it. We would develop machinery, and then you'd see subtle changes that were made because parts of it failed or whatever, and it required revamping. And, new ideas. When you're sort of working with farmers who are very innovative, when something breaks, they've got to keep it going. So they would make a modification, and then we would incorporate that modification in other machinery. Of course, we wouldn't give them any credit for it, but that's how it was. And it was just sort of the ongoing presentation of staying alive and paying wages. And I was allowed to paint machinery initially. I was allowed to chip the welds. They were all stick weld, and lots of slag and needed lots of cleaning up. And as a young boy, I was pretty handy, being able to tap something and make a lot of noise.
I see you doing that, Peter. I can see you doing that.
Yeah, and I'm still doing it. Thanks, Mark. Stepping up to the plate, then I went to a pretty good boarding school run by the De La Salle brothers in a place called Armidale in New South Wales, and I went to boarding school, and just really, they fostered my love of physics and, jumping in and out of really cold water in the swimming pool all through winter. Armidale happens to be not the same height as Colorado, but it feels as cold during winter. Not as much snow, but there was ice on the top of the pond that we were swimming in. And,
oh wow!
Yeah, we used to love getting in there, as you can imagine, at 6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And we'd do this day in, day out. So I grew to love water no matter what. And give it my loving as I got in there, It was just a lot of fun. I ended up studying and trying to find out about a product that we would refer to in those days as polywater. Polywater, I assumed, was something like polystyrene beads of water. But there didn't ever seem to be any. And I made a serious comment to my father on one occasion. I said to him, Dad, can you tell me about, if you know anything about polywater? And he was really quick. He, of course, told me that it was called parrot's piss. And Polly as in Polly wants a cracker. So that made it a real event for me from that on, to get the last laugh.
Can you explain a little bit more about polywater? Because I'm sure, including myself, is scratching our heads over here. So it's the first time I ever heard of polywater.
Well, it was my description of what water needed to be. It needed to be in a fully balanced particle that didn't actually flow or didn't blend with the other particles. In other words, it was just like sand, but the water was in its own balanced configuration. Does that sort of make sense?
It was what you're envisioning of how the properties of water should be.
Well, yeah. It was, if pure water was H2O, then there'd be 2H, 1O, and just one droplet of water, if you could visualize it.
Right.
We did electrolysis. We did all sorts of stuff. But we could never put water, get the droplet of water, to go back with 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. It always became something else. So the electrolysis side of it only worked one way. It didn't go back in balance. So it was never a balanced substitute. If you heated up an object, you ended up with vapor on the side. If you cooled it, you ended up with vapor on the side. All sorts of things where you're associating and playing with water. When you are pumping water, water makes a sound inside of steel that starts to resonate like some of Mark's flutes, and you get this heavy drone or cavitation. If you're in a speedboat, you can hear cavitation from the propeller. The way the propellers are designed to go through water are generally in a screw formation, but they will end up pitting and chewing out rather quickly. If there's an electrical discharge happening from the propeller shaft or through the engine, if there's a static charge, you need a galvanic reaction modulator or something that'll take the charge, which is why they use zinc plating or tabs, nodules, just to stop the engines and the propellers from being chewed out completely. So there was lots of activity that I was aware of associated with river pumps that we were making and other equipment that was, running through heavy clay soils where you get lots of build-up of like a static charge. In dry times, you can hear the steel squealing and screaming its head off as it's going through, but then you can change the angle of attack of a blade and it becomes very quiet and just slices the material away. So you'd end up listening to vibration as sound, sound as heat, and you'd sort of work along that way to sort of save your equipment.
Right.
There was a real love. I found a couple of articles that were describing in the Australian Electronics magazine about a guy called Yul Brown. He ended up being a professor, Professor Yul Brown, and he had come up with water and electrolysis action and made a welder out of the combined gases, and that intrigued me. He was also one of the only people driving around Sydney over the Harbour Bridge, one of our fuel crises where Sydney had run out of fuel. Very, very intriguing man. And I got to meet one of the chaps that had worked with him closely, Professor Ron Davis, who described some of Yul Brown's work. And I ended up...
Tom and Ramon, are you familiar with Yul Brown?
No, this is actually the first time.
Well, see, a lot of your listeners would probably know of Yul Brown, and they'd probably be really wanting Peter to talk a bit more about him. I mean, I'm thinking because it's like people in who work with water for gas and that kind of thing. They're really, I think they go in a different direction from what Yul Brown originally did. One of the things that really intrigued me was Peter's stories about Yul Brown, how his approach to HHO actually worked and charged water. I mean, I'd really like Peter to talk about that more here because Peter hasn't really talked about this in other settings. I mean, it's a good opportunity to get some of this stuff out. Peter's knowledge is really quite extensive in this area.
Oh, thanks, Mark. That's the first kind thing you've ever said to me.
Yeah, from a coconut.
Okay, so, yeah, exactly.
So
there's a little bit more fiber, isn't there?
We'll just change the name to the 100th coconut.
Well, monkeys have got to live on something, so this might be it. The fun part about it is Yul Brown developed a company that was called Brown's Energy Systems Technology Australia Limited. Some of his inventions were what they refer to as a Brown's gas generator. The world was introduced to the commercial scene of Australia's a powerful technology, subtly created for the development of a safe, clean industrial welding gas. So it was operated at between 40 and 60 psi. You guys know about that. It The flame contained both hydrogen and oxygen, but it would vaporize everything that it came in touch with. In other words, it could vaporize a brick, and you could weld steel to brick. You could weld duralium, which was only ever able to be drilled and riveted. You could now weld with it using one of his welders. So you could do fusion welding, brazing, soldering, welding aluminium.
What year?
What
year did he come up with this?
Well, his patent, yeah, I do. I've actually got his patent in my hand right at the moment. His patent was lodged on the 30th of June, 1971.
Okay.
And and it was granted, to that registered date at some stage later. His declaration in support of an application for patent, support of the patent application by Yule Brown for the patent and the invention titled welding machine. And that's what he was only ever able to get as a welding machine. They wouldn't allow him to use it in conjunction with a vehicle, although he had vehicles able to run on this particular gas. Just rather intriguing. So it was an electrolysis cell that he made. It had a number of different plates in it. He would separate hydrogen on one side and oxygen on the other and bring them back through a torch, much the same as a normal welding torch. It worked really well. There were idiosyncrasies with the machine. I got to play with one that had been restored and got working correctly by a gentleman through the ASTRO, which is Alternative Science Technology Research Organisation, so ASTRO. And the gentleman's name was Graham Coe. Graham had worked on one of Yule's welders that had been bought by that association, or been bought by a gentleman by the name of Noah, who put the money out there to have something that they could play with and make it happening. Yeah. So you could do all sorts of cutting, profile cutting, underwater cutting. You could do flame drilling, annealing, heat treatment, flame polishment, and excellent for brick glazing, etc. So those units were absolutely stunning. And I got to go to a workshop that was happening at Byron Bay, and I got to play with that welder when the media arrived. And some of the media knew of me as part of the Inventors Association. I'd been publicity officer on the Northern Rivers area in New South Wales. And I got to direct them directly to the person who'd made and done the work in getting this machine operating, which was a gentleman by the name of Graham Coe, and that's C-O-E, Graham Coe. So Graham subsequently followed me up about 2 days later, came to my home in Casino, and I shouted him a cup of coffee, and on his leaving about an hour or so later, he said, "Oh, look, I'd like to show you something," and he lifted the bonnet on his car, or the hood, if you like the guys call it that, and inside the engine, I noted a copper tube that was going directly to underneath the carburetor, and in front of his radiator, he had two tubes about 4 inches in diameter, sitting there with a T-piece connecting them with this copper tubing running directly under the radiator. And I just looked at it and I said, "Oh, you cheeky bastard." I questioned his parentage immediately. It's just a loving term in Australia, much like coconut.
I've been called cheeky bastard before here. To interrupt you really quickly, what's the difference between that gas and brown gas? Is it the same thing or is it different?
Well, I believe it's the same thing. Instead of it being in a plate formation, it ended up being in a tube formation. In other words, there was a tube that was negatively charged, and there was an outside tube which was positively charged.
Right.
So it's basically just a tube design instead of there being plates sitting side by side together.
Okay.
So that's really, it's just a construction, ease of construction and ease of assembly, if you like. So Graham showed me this, and I said to him, I said, well, what percentage of fuel saving are you getting? And he said to me, about 70%.
Well,
Now, I said, well, what do you want me to do about it? I'm an inventor. He said, well, I don't want you to patent it. I said, well, okay, I won't patent it. I said, what do you want me to do about it? And he said, I want you to show and tell as many people as you can about it. Well, if you all look on the mirror, I'm doing my job.
why didn't he want you to patent it? What was the reason for it?
Well, it was given to him by his father. It had been patented before by a number of different people who had all turned up dead.
Okay.
Hmm.
That's a good reason not to.
Yeah, well, that was one of his encouraging things to me. If you don't patent it, you've got more chance of staying alive. And I just, I've always maintained that. The people who were with me had breached that ethic, and I had to tread on them fairly hard. But, in the end, they haven't patented, and we've continued to use it, or they've died, only from old age. But, that's what happens. So the fun part was that I then took it to a couple of other people in my local region. One was an ambulance officer who loved going fast and had a pretty snazzy-looking vehicle at the time, beautiful Fairlane, that was meticulously polished to an inch of its depth, and if you walked past it, he'd have to take the shadow off it,
Typical Ford driver.
Absolutely, but a wonderful character. And I showed him Graham's vehicle, and subsequently he got interested as well. I showed other mechanics in the region. They in turn got interested with it, and then I showed a gentleman by the name of Joe. Joe had been a mechanic that I'd used, just a backyard mechanic. And those times of, fixing up unusual pieces of equipment or getting an engine to run that was running in a dodgy manner. And Joe would get it operating. So we went up to Joe's place, and I said to him, listen, can you come and tell me what's the matter with this engine? And Joe came out in his normal manner and said, there's nothing the matter with that engine you got here, You didn't have to push. So that was fair enough. And he's two coconuts, Joe.
Yeah.
A little bit more value than me sometimes. The fun part was that our local dairy industry had lots of stainless steel that had been contaminated and been replaced. They'd rebuilt something, and they just had a huge yard that had all different sorts of stainless steel components and whatever sitting in this backyard. And as part of the Inventors Association, we'd actually been given permission when we'd asked just to be able to go in and grab a couple of bits of stainless as we required them. And I sent Joe down to grab a couple of pieces of stainless so that we could duplicate what Graham had showed us. And while Joe was down there, noticed a nice machine that had some really wonderful tubes on it, which he succumbed and started to remove. And
I'll have that.
He did. And the machine happened to be an ice cream vacuating machine, which was probably worth $250,000 at the time. And we turned it into scrap instantly. Much
Thank you very much.
Yeah. But, the story is that it was probably worth it for what we did. We got the tubes back, and we put another inside square mesh type tube inside one of these long tubes, which were nearly a yard long for you guys. say 3 feet. It was 4 inches in diameter, 3 foot long, and had a tube or like a horn, like a bugle horn arrangement in the middle of it as well, which was about probably 2.5 inches flared out to probably 3.5, just on a nozzle. And that was about 18 inches long. That ended up giving us an effect that was happening with the reaction taking place inside the cell, which was an electrolysis action, where it produced gas relatively fast, then bugled it off the top, then up into an upright, which was a 90-degree 4-inch piece of, 3-inch diameter, 4 inches high. Piece of
was the bell of the tapered part up or down?
Sideways. So
it
was just laying.
And so which part was it exhausting from?
We had it. It was because it was about half the length of the outer tube. The inner tube, this bugle length or bugle-ended piece of tubing, it sort of bubbled out, and then the other end behind it was an upright or a 90-degree angle off at about 4 inches in length, but it was only 3 inches. So a 3-inch piece sitting on a 4-inch had a screw piece fitted to it, which we in turn then fitted a outlet nozzle. So it was a pressure vessel, had on one end a screw that had glass in it, so you could actually view inside the cell what was going on, which we did. You know, it was we connected it up to 12 volts. We added a little bit of caustic soda to the water so that it become a little bit more electrolyte or electrolytic, a little bit more reactive to 12 volts. And you could see the bubbles forming and rushing to the surface of this cell. Then we fitted it to the engine, and we were running a 3.5 V8 Rover. The Rover is an English vehicle, but the aluminium V8 is both block and heads were all aluminium, very light and super absorbent, and also apparently highly statically charged to this particular gas that's coming off. I ran the vehicle before the cell went on, and I got it to rev up to about 5,500 RPM before it would do valve bouncing. There was 7,000 on the tacho, but it didn't go anywhere near that. It was about 1,500 short. We fitted the water cell to it, and I started the engine. Joe was playing around with the timing, and I saw that needle stick against 7,000 real easy. It was slamming that needle so hard on that pin, I thought it would break it. But the engine, I estimated, just my engineering estimation, without running a meter on it, I reckon it was probably doing 10,000 easy. We thought, okay, it's running. How long will it run for? Let's just take the power off and see what happens. So we took the power from the 12-volt battery away from it, and lo and behold, the engine ran better. It now started to do nearly probably 16,000 RPM. We're waiting for pistons to arrive through the shed roof.
Right.
We thought they'd go straight through on it without any drama whatsoever. And out through the floor, you know, like this thing was just screaming. But it was in a really balanced mode. It wasn't fighting. It just wanted to do it. Every time I threw my foot flat to the floor on this thing, it just hammered. And I thought Joe was getting a new engine by the end of the day. You know, he was going to have to rebuild this thing, you know. But it absolutely flew. This engine was just revving in this idle manner, you know, without any load on it at this point. It was just screaming. If you'd taken it to the racetrack, there would have been nothing go anywhere near it. It just had that instant response, as if you'd blueprinted this engine and you'd done everything to it. You'd got it with double magnetos and all sorts of things. It just had that full alive feeling, like this thing just wanted to hammer. It wanted to fly. It just didn't want to sit in that engine bay at all. It wanted to move on. It was just exciting. So that's how I got involved with making Joe cells.
Wow.
So,
Peter, just so you know, sorry, Tom. Tom works in building ambulances. So.
yeah, that's I'm a assembly supervisor for a company here in Western Washington in the U.S. Yeah, we build ambulances, and it's quite an interesting profession. But I actually got some a download from, I don't remember where I got it, a blueprint for building a cell, and it was the same basic design as stainless tube, but they're both parallel tubes. Does the bell shape of the one tube does that increase the rate of what the hell?
Well, I think I've got you. I think it just changes the frequency that the water vibrated and came away at. I think that's what it was doing.
And you removed the 12-volt power from it, and it continued to generate hydrogen?
Yes. And looking at it, when you look in the glass, the bubbles were no longer on the surface. The bubbles were coming away from within the water. So it was like a vapor mist was being sucked out of the water itself.
Wow.
Are you saying rather from within the water rather than on the plate?
Right.
Yeah, it was coming away from within the water itself. Correct.
Wow.
So it sounds to me like there was a field was created around it itself. It's kind of that self-generating field.
Yeah.
This is really interesting.
Yeah.
You guys, Ramona and Tom, there's something that I think that would be really great to bring out in this interview, because this is something that would shed a lot of light on different things and provide avenues for development in really positive directions, in my opinion. I would really love to hear Peter talk about how the story of how it came to be that these cells were called Joe cells in the first place, because it opens the door to a really, really fascinating relationship between Peter and Joe and a group of other people. But really, Peter and Joe are have this very symbiotic relationship. I find that a fascinating story, and I know it, but it hasn't come out in public yet, really. And that's one of the things that I was hoping you guys would tease out.
Oh, absolutely.
Spill it. Spill the beans, Peter.
Yeah, well, pay money, guys. Pay money.
I'll give you $1. Hey.
This has got to be worth a lot of money, Either to keep me quiet or tell you all about it.
Checks in the mail.
Checks in the mail.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
I'll pay you when you get here.
Yeah, I know. What? Just as I'm leaving Bangladesh, you'll give me money?
Just like Bangladesh. I'll pay you when you get here. Yeah. Probably.
Well, I can send you several things of parsley and some sage.
Oh, wonderful. That's really what we need.
I'll send you some mint.
I can see a monkey coming my way too with a bit of information on it. That 8-gig monkey, everybody should buy one. Come on.
There you
Spend
go.
the $40, guys. Get real. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what happened. Okay. So to cut a long story short, the guy that I brought up, Professor Ron Davis, and Joe were discussing religion in a pretty good way. And I ended up having to go home. One of my children was severely intellectually challenged, and I needed to be there to assist in at meal times and bath and so forth. With 5 kids, my wife was absolutely amazing in those days, being able to do it all, but she really needed help. So at the end of the day, we'd done as much as we could to this engine without actually running it out on the road, and I left Joe and Ron Davis together, and lo and behold, Ron would normally come and stay at my place. He never turned up, and Joe went missing. So did the vehicle. Apparently, the story was subsequently after that they got the vehicle and jumped in it and went up to Toowoomba or some other place and went for a jaunt, a ride, and wherever they went, I've no idea fully. But the situation, that's been described to me after that, because I'd been introduced to it by Astro, I also asked some of the members of Astro to come and validate what we'd done, which I thought was, the right thing to do. So it was probably another couple of months after that before they actually got there and filmed. But at this stage, the other cell had gone missing. That long cell had just disappeared, as it has at the moment, from last year. It had been with me for about 11 years without anybody else having it, but it's gone missing again. So it's got a mind of its own. The fun part with this naming of the Joe cell was that an alternative magazine by the name of Nexus magazine, running on alternative energy or science, the gentleman there, loosely termed, made or wrote an article that described Joe as the actual inventor of this particular thing, whereas in actual fact he'd been shown, and had been directly shown by me. And as I'd introduced Graham Coe to him, Graham had also showed him other bits and pieces that he'd made over the period of time that he'd been working with this particular gas, all different types of assemblies of this stainless steel. And, the people at Nexus magazine referred to it then as a Joe's cell, which I found rather intriguing, and I've rubbished him about it for a lot of years. In fact, anybody who needed to know, I've always offered Joe's phone number to them, and drove him nuts. Like, you don't get angry, you get even, type stuff. So, yeah, lots of fun. And anyway, to cut a long story short, he came back and apologised. And we've been mates ever since, although he's still not allowed in my yard. The wife won't let him in. As she said, he did you once, he'll do you again. So, we have a rather strange relationship. Mark indicated it was symbiotic. I'm just not allowed to put my hands on him, isn't that it? We're going to just take him away from around his throat. No, we have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We put a lot of rubbish on each other. We've done a lot of filming, and a lot of those are available on YouTube.
Okay, guys. So from if you look at it and you can see it for what it is, you can watch these interviews. They're hilarious because, you're watching interviews where Peter's filming Joe talking about it, and it's a Joe cell. So everybody's hanging to find out what Joe thinks about the Joe cell. And Joe, even in the interview, says it's not a Joe cell. It should be a something else cell, or Peter cell, or what. He says, I don't even make them. He'll even say this in the interviews, but everybody's going, what does Joe think about the Joe cell? And then it ends up just being hilarious. It's just, for me, it's just funny to watch. But not to say that Joe hasn't played a large part in the development of the Joe cell over time, and also Joe's gone in other directions, worked with other things that Peter has shown him, and other people, like things that he's played around with. So these guys are very, very interesting. What they're working on in the background in this little hole in the middle of Australia, they're doing some really wild and funky stuff. Like they're taking, you might give them the story of the drag racing deal with in Tasmania, there was a race put on between a funny car and a jet engine drag racer. You open to talking about that, Peter?
Well, I wasn't there, but I did see the film a number of times, and I can comment on it. Although its whereabouts now are unknown, apart from it's been buried, either physically buried, or broken up in such a way that it won't be going again. The fast times in those days in '94, a fast time for a funny car was about six seconds. There was some talk that you might get it down to under 6. The twin jets that it was actually racing against would often do 6 seconds for the quarter mile. Mind you, they're doing well below that now. But the fun part with this particular vehicle, the funny cars normally stand up. The front wheels come off the ground. This didn't happen. On the drop down, there was no pre-warming of tyres on this particular run. The engine was cold, the tyres were cold, and when the lights dropped from red down through amber green, it was noted as being 4.79 seconds.
Wow.
Before the funny car reached a quarter mile. So it snapped the world record by, second and a half, a bit over. Just a wisp of a wispy vapor just came out of the exhaust, and you heard a sonic boom. The revelation of the film, as you're looking at it, the vehicle in slow-mo, the wheels are off the ground, so it's actually flying.
You guys, I was told this story by a friend of mine who saw this video, and he's been friends with Joe for quite a few years, and he was telling me this story a couple of years ago. I just thought he was full of it, because it's like, but if you look at the history, you look at this event, this actual funny car did make that record, and it was a real surpriser.
Is it on YouTube, this video?
No. I've not made any attempt to put it on YouTube. I don't actually have a copy of it. Joe
it's on a VHS. Isn't it on a VHS tape?
Yeah, it's on an old VHS. It'll snap one day. It'll be a waste of time. Nobody will have it. Yeah, a lot of this stuff really needs to be digitally mastered and, saved for however long the digital age lasts. It's probably old technology today. So we really should just leave it in stone or just leave it on the water, So a lot of fun. So that ended up being quite an event. And that was running water only, no petrol to slow the engine down.
Wow.
Okay. Let's say, so this is jumping lots and lots of steps, and since I know some things, I just want to ask questions that are on a direction that I know where this could get super interesting to some people who are listening. So, Peter, could you talk about the reason why you can see, or what's happening when you're running on this these air cells, what we're calling an air cell, that why is it changing it to a different kind of an engine? Are you seeing it as an partial implosion engine? What happens when you don't run fuel through it, that kind of thing? Could you just talk about this a bit, because this is really interesting stuff.
Well, let's say that the listeners are aware at the moment that they're burning petrol or diesel. Let's say with diesel, they've got the pistons are arriving towards top dead center. The injector fires a level of diesel into that compressing air. It reaches ionization, saturation, there's a spark discharge. And the next cylinder arrives and does the same thing. It's the electrical frequencies that are actually then being converted to rotation or rotating power through the crankshaft. That's probably the first abnormality. It's not just the explosion, which is very cold within a hundredth of a second in the exhaust. As you go to vacuum, it instantly becomes cold. So as the piston has gone over the top dead center, which has reached its maximum compression, and as it's going down, it then becomes instantly cold. Well, not cold, but we'll call cold. But the fun part is that it's actually an electrical charge or static charge that is actually spinning the crankshaft. So the white metal that's on the crankshaft two surfaces is acting as a bearing, but in actual fact it's acting also as a generator. So that's rather unique. Petrol has a similar sort of electrical charge taking place in it as well, and it spins the crankshaft as well. It just seems to be a little bit more torque within a diesel, whether it's the weight of the engine or whether it's the length of spark that's taking place. Even though there's no spark plug in a diesel engine, there are glow plugs, or there's a heated environment for the diesel to flash or vaporize instantly. So yeah, there's lots of fun. You can push more air in with turbos or with all the rest of it to try and increase its compressibility, or
So what
sorts of other stuff.
So what you're saying is, as the fuel is coming into the chamber, it is coming in electrically charged, and flowing already towards the crankshaft, so to say, following the path of the piston, and the momentum of that electrical charge is giving it extra momentum on the crank.
Yeah, I think there's direction within the bearings to create, further movement of that electrical frequency. So if you put more fuel in, there's more of an electrical charge that's being precipitated by the bearings on the crankcase, on the crankshaft. And in answer to that, there are vehicles now that are electrically shut down by firing a spark into the crank and or through their computers, discharging the crank so that now the engine stops. Otherwise, of course, the old days you used to have to starve it of air or fuel to get the engine to stop. But now you can actually charge or put a different charge onto the crank or earth it out or whatever it is that they're using to stop the engine from rotating. What we've shown also is that what does air conditioning have to do with running a vehicle? We found that we can put a spark from a lead from a petrol engine into an air conditioning line, and then bring that spark back to a point where it, another one, some ass driving one of these cells. But the engine didn't rev its head off. The fun part is that the cells...
Nice sound effects, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a lot to get that there, Mark. I'll have a galah here for you in a minute.
Thank you.
Yeah, galah happens to be a parrot or a bird that has a beautiful voice, just similar to Mark.
Or an unruly friend.
Actually, we're coming up to the top of the hour, and
fantastic.
Yeah, that's good because
this is
that's more to say.
There's some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, the next hour we'll be able to stay as long as we want. But
well, it won't be an hour then, will it?
No.
Well, the next segment, we'll call it a segment.
Right. Okay. Well, everybody's going to miss out on what we're actually really here for.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you guys.
You're just going to have to become a member, guys.
There you go. There you go.
Get your little 100th monkey USB stick so that you can copy it, paste everything into your computer, and Ramon, how do we sell these? They're only $40.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Well, hey, where can somebody find? You guys have a websites going? Would you put those out for us, please?
Okay, we've got Peter Stevens. Peter Stevens has a spiffy website at weathercreation.com. That's WEATHERCREATION.com, weathercreation.com. Most interesting website I've got besides Peter's going is a group that I'm working with Ralph Ring, who's, if you want to find out more, he's got an interview with Hundredth Monkey, and also Project Camelot interviewed him a while back and is going to again in February 15th here. They're doing another interview with Ralph and Marcia. That website is bluestarenterprise.com, so BLUESTARENTERPRISE.com, bluestarenterprise.com, and that's about it. I don't think there's a bunch of stuff going on, but.
So Tom, in the segment that these people are going to miss out, we're going to be talking a little bit about rainmaking.
Yeah, weather creation is really exciting. This is exciting stuff. Charged water, cleaning rivers, cleaning water, making rain, dialing down storms, changing the direction of hurricanes, dialing them down, cleaning water, cleaning radioactive water, turning radioactive water into non-radioactive water. These kind of things. This is Peter Steve.
We hope.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, and Peter also went to Fukushima, so we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah.
And didn't come by to visit me, but I won't hold it against him.
Okay, guys. Well,
you should have been there.
Check out Peter's website. He's got. I mean, if you're interested in this alternative energy and fuels, and oh my God, there's just magnetics and 0 point and all sorts of stuff there, guys. Check it out. He's just got a treasure trove of information there.
Sorry to interrupt, but could I please say in this segment that just if there's anybody out there, we're really trying to work with somebody who's serious about working with Peter, because he's got a lot to offer, and there's a lot we can do, a lot of good we can do in the world. If there's anybody serious who's got some wherewithal to team up with us, it'd be really great to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. Okay, guys. Thanks a lot for listening to the first hour, and after Brooks is done here, pop on over and jump to the member section at www.the100thmonkeyradio.com. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
Yay. Okay. Outcry for people who want a better planet, and there are powers that be that let their people panic. Look at the Gulf of Japan, cause they have really planned it, heading for the iceberg like the Titanic. Atlantic mystery, Atlantis white from history, the truth about the pyramids in ancient Mayan prophecy. Space odyssey, look into the anomalies.